everybody. Welcome to Play-by-Play Theater's Q&A, where we are featuring a variety of professional artists in the entertainment industry. And we have been having a wonderful week.
It's been great.
I'm Mary.
I'm Carolyn.
And we are so happy that you're joining us today with today's special guest. But before I start, I have to make a correction from yesterday's interview with conductor Richard Carsey. I mistakenly gave the wrong year for our date.
We know you were all wondering.
Yeah, you know, in case you fact check, the date was actually 2011. So I just want to be truthful about that. Because when I have a date, I let everybody know. Speaking of being truthful, today's guest, truthfully, is one of the most, if not the best, director I have had the privilege of working with. So with a myriad of credits from New York regionally, here is the amazing Guy Stroman. Woo!
Yay! Don't you two look good? How are you?
I'm having a hair day, but you know, what's new, right?
Well, who's not in this time period? Thank goodness I live with my hair cutter. So,
yes.
Yeah.
Tell everybody who your hair cutter is.
It's Bobby Grayson, Emmy Award-winning hair designer, and he got laid off too. He was working on New Amsterdam, that NBC hospital drama series, and when all of this shut down here in New York. So he not only, because he was working on a hospital drama, he was not only able to, bring all of his hair products over to the house, but also a couple of masks from the prop department that we've been relying on.
Oh, wow.
Because they were just sitting there in the props department. You know, New Amsterdam, so many of those television shows that are hospital donated all of their hospital equipment, to the real hospitals in this town. They did a lot of shooting over at Bellevue and Kings County Hospital out in Brooklyn. That's where they were shooting.
Yeah.
When they had to stop production there before they even finished the season. So,
yeah. Wow.
So we've all just been kind of seeing how we can live now here in Midtown Manhattan.
So both of you have been self-quarantining or whatever together?
Yeah,
and
we have. And it's not been bad, because, Manhattan is surreal. Every day I said looks like New Year's Day because there's no traffic on 10th Avenue. We're right on 10th Avenue and 43rd. And you can see the Holland Tunnel out from my window here, and there's never any traffic in the Holland Tunnel, which is, you think, well, it must be New Year's Day, but it's been New Year's Day now for a couple of months. So,
yeah.
It's amazing how this particular community, and even neighborhood by neighborhood in New York, whether it be in any of the 5 boroughs, neighborhoods sort of rise to that occasion, doing whatever they need to do. Mary, where you and I have sat countless times there at the West Bank Cafe on 42nd and 9th Avenue, that has the Laurie Beachman Theater downstairs, where you and I have done so many, readings and cabarets, and we've seen shows down there.
Laurie Beachman was the original narrator in Joseph.
Yeah, and the original star to be in Annie.
In Annie.
NYC. She was young. Yeah, she was gone too soon. But they named that little theater down there after her. But Steve has been, opening up to, you just stop over there between 1 and 7 o'clock and order by ringing the doorbell right there at the front door. And he's been back there cooking food for the neighborhood. And then if you're having to wait for your order to be finished, he just goes behind the bar and gets a bottle of white wine and pours a glass, while you're waiting. So it's that kind of attitude and community. Yeah.
Well, that sounds like it's right up your alley for this.
Sure. Yeah, 'cause it's just down the street. We get so sick of our own cooking that at least once a week we go over there and order from Steve. So.
Yeah. Well, people like you and I and Carolyn, New York to us is theater, and and the impact there has been profound.
Yeah.
Also, everywhere else across the country, and you describing it just shutting down there.
It has, particularly, things that we have, you and I spent so much time on these streets, that places that we've gone into forever, the restaurants that support the surrounding theaters, walking into a hotel bar, or going upstairs to Sardi's at the bar there in the upstairs bars to meet people and socialize and still do business, because it's such a social business that we're in. You can, 8 hours you can rehearse all day, and another 6 you can socialize trying to get your next job, basically, or at least let people, self-publicize, let people know you're working, because you're buying that night or whatever, but you're paying for it. But a lot of those places can't sustain themselves if the people that are in and around this neighborhood aren't able to be there. So it's taken, in the last couple of days have been pretty eventful, I guess, to use the right word, with Frozen announcing that it was not going to reopen because Disney is circling their wagons, because it's easier to support the 2 long-running shows they have rather than support a third at a theater they don't own, I guess. That, and they've got so many international companies of that show either ready to open or going to open in 2021 in Germany and Australia and Tokyo, I believe. But and then the League of Theater Producers saying that, at least in terms of ticket refunds and such, that's now done until at least Labor Day, and most of the people around here are thinking it'll take longer for people to really want to come to a theater and congregate in these theaters here in Midtown. So
you always have your finger on the pulse of theater and what's going on. I go to you. You are from a book of knowledge. And current events, you keep us posted on stuff. So all of your insights and
call me at any time, because I seem to have a free schedule, so we can talk about anything you want to.
well, First of all, we have to talk about Forever Plaid.
Yes,
we have to talk about it.
Justin agrees.
Justin Hart agrees. Justin Hart, who says he is gushing Plaid. This is awesome. Justin also moved from the East Coast back to Wisconsin. Justin, if I am wrong, just please chime in.
Let us know.
Please let us know. And he and his lovely wife also, in the shadow of Mark and Silverberg and Mary Ellinger, started a theater company.
You guys are the Lunts of Green Bay, right? Yeah.
Well, he was in Oshkosh, and so that's how we met, doing Plaid Tidings. But go back now.
That's right. Yes.
Everybody in the biz knows Forever Plaid. Please.
Isn't that amazing? Because, we started that little, that's when our hearts were young and gay, weren't they? Look at that.
Oh, look at you.
Yeah, that's the album cover. Actually, when they used to have CD covers with artwork inside and lots of information, it was full of it. It was believe you me. But for a show that we started, literally, it was James Raitt who called me. He and Stuart Ross had looked at the idea, because Stuart literally had a record collection of 45 records. If people remember what 45s were, they looked like overblown CDs with a bigger hole in the middle, right? But he had one from his brother's collection of CDs. People put them in little cases and lined them all up, those little 45 records. And he just had this idea of those guy groups, which was they weren't doo-wop, and it wasn't rock and roll, and it wasn't barbershop singing. It was kind of a lush orchestral 4-part harmony of the 4 lads and the 4 aces and the high-lows and the Letterman, and some of the girl groups did the same. The McGuire sisters, the Lennon sisters had that same sort of stretched, really lush orchestral sound that wasn't doo-wop or barbershop.
Yeah.
And I can remember getting a call from James after they had done one incarnation where the guys were alive and they were still rehearsing in Frankie's parents' basement, and I was supposed to have done that, but I was doing a play in Philadelphia. In 2 different theaters, a Charles Ludlam play, two character where you play all the other characters, called The Mystery of Irma Vep. Do you remember Charles Ludlam's plays? They were just nuts. He would take these classics and skew them so strangely. But So Peter Bartlett and I were doing that play, and I couldn't do this production where the four Plaids were still alive. They did it, I believe, in Montclair, New Jersey, at the theater, at the university there. Can't remember the gentleman who, Fred, what was his name? He used to produce in there, summer theater. Anyway, I was in between two theaters in Philadelphia and went to see it, and it was, tough. And James, about a year later, I had just come back from Germany, singing a series of concerts there at a conservatory in outside of Essen, Germany, Dusseldorf and Essen. And James called and said, "Guy, what are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I just got back." And he said, "Well, you want to do Plaid again? We killed them." And I went, "What?" He said, "Yeah, we killed them. They're dead. They were too much like losers if they were still alive trying to do this. So we just killed them off. And we've gotten rid of the entire script." He said, "I've got some charts, but Stuart says, well, if you can find four guys that want to work on this, he'll do it again. Do you want to do it?" And I said, "With you? Yeah, let's see what you got." Because it was nothing. We had several charts, trunkload of songs that James had arranged. Yeah. And Stuart had kind of placed 3 monologues, and that was it. That's all we had. So we started learning that music. And we were all doing other shows. I was playing Mordred in Camelot up at Westchester. It used to be called an evening dinner theater. Now it's the Westchester Broadway Theater. Yeah. And I think Jason Graw was doing, I don't know if it was Hello Mutta, Hello Fado, but a review up at Steve McGraw's, which is now the Triad Theater on 72nd Street. Used to be Paulson's, where Forbidden Broadway had started.
Yes, yes.
And let's see, who else was doing something? I think at that point, Gabe Barry was still doing productions of Barnum around or helping put up production. I can't remember, but we're all busy. So we'd rehearse during the day. And within 3 weeks, we had 50 minutes of material. And in fact, we're coming up on an anniversary next week. On May the 20th, it will be 30 years since Forever Plaid opened, the full version of it.
Yeah.
But that October before that, we had 50 minutes. And we had, running charts and cheat sheets, taped down on the floor of that little theater at Steve McGraw's on 72nd Street. And I would just step down because the guys couldn't remember what we had done from, day to day. And we just sort of made this up on the fly as we went and got us through those 50 minutes. And the audience we had there went nuts. And this is really prophetic. I went downstairs kind of vibrating because, we didn't know if they were going to just sit there and, walk out or boo us or throw some vegetables. We didn't know. We didn't know what would happen. And they went crazy. And I was kind of vibrating coming downstairs because at that point, Steve still had the bar downstairs in the restaurant. And the television was on. And I went, wonder why they're watching a disaster movie instead of watching the World Series. It was October the 18th. And it was the Oakland earthquake. I thought it was a disaster movie. It was like collapsed freeways and there was footage of that. And I thought, well, is that prophetic? The poor Plaid come back to life for one show only, after being dead, and bring a whole earthquake to the West Coast, to the San Francisco area. But that was 30 years ago, this past October. And I got all of this thread from David Engel, the Smudge, in our show, with him saying 30 years ago, gentlemen, he was texting all of us. This is back in October. And I just had to sit down because at that moment I was in rehearsal for Pittsburgh Civic Light Opera's production of Forever Plaid to bring it back for the 15th anniversary of when we opened that theater with that show. And I was directing the whole new cast to open the 15th anniversary for that theater in Pittsburgh. And I had to sit down. I went, guys, it's a little bit like a Groundhog Day right now. I'm going to have to get my breath because 30 years ago today, we did our first performance in front of an audience. And then on the 20th next week will be the 30th anniversary of the full version. So it was just a show that we just, after that October, obviously we'd do a Monday night show or we'd do Meg Bussert. Do you remember Meg Bussert, Mary? Oh, she was playing Guinevere, and she would drive me into New York and drop me off on 72nd Street. I'd just gotten out of my tights playing Mordred, and I'd get in my tux, and we'd do 1 or 2 shows a week. we do a midnight show up on Friday nights, just trying to attract, the audience and work on different material, because we'd put things in and the audience would just sit there and, do this. We go, well, that's cut. We won't do that again. And trying to refine it and it lengthen it in front of an audience. Is what we ended up doing.
But you needed the audience to do that. You can't do a new piece and just put it up thinking that that's it. It's a finished product.
No. Particularly with a show that functions in no time. It's not like, you do one scene and you walk off stage and get a soda and go, well, that went well. You're out there the whole time, and it functions in real concert time.
Yeah.
So you are literally dealing with a show that has two realities. That what we call, breaking the fourth wall. You literally come down and relate to the audience, use the audience many times in that show. And then you have this linear relationship amongst the four actors that's very bare bones in terms of any kind of dialogue or scenes. You just have to subtextually deal with the fact that these guys know each other. These guys love singing with each other. And they are somehow all four committed to trying to do the same thing with what time they have,
Right.
And it ended up not being some sort of nostalgic show or camp show about, just four dead guys singing old tunes. It really got cross-generational. Little kids loved this show. Yeah. Young adults had never heard harmonic singing. They grew up with real rhythmic-based music. And the older adults that came, that was their prom music. They dated to that music. Yeah. It was the top 40 music of their day. So, and then it became very universal, with what would you do if you had a chance to go back and take the path that life somehow veered you away from. Just for the day, So.
Now, this is has such a longevity, this piece, and it will go over. I mean, people say, I just love this. It's fascinating. Right, it is. I agree, Justin. Yeah. Fascinating. Just love it. And it will continue to be that way. Unfortunately, with a small cast.
Yes.
For in these days too. But now I have to ask you, because I didn't know you back then.
No, we met after that.
How much of you and the other guys did you help steward and create?
Well, the way those characters ended up, it's I'm going to plug you in so I get a better sound from you. The way those characters ended up really were, in the truest sense of the word, evidences of us, because you can't portray or play any qualities. Can you guys still hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. You can't play qualities in this kind of. You have to play it for keeps. I mean, you're already a sight gag when you walk out there. You've got on a plaid bow tie. So you don't have to do anything, and it's a real important exercise for actors, particularly actors who work in musical theater, to trust the fact that they are enough. So those characters closely aligned with who we were personally. I ended up being spokesmodel. There we are.
Larry. Oh my God.
Yeah. There's Larry, there's Stan Chandler, David Engel, and me.
Yeah, I worked with all of you except Stan.
Yeah.
That one.
Yeah. Larry, David, and Stan are all in Los Angeles still. Or yet again. And David has been living here, but during this period, Larry was supposed to be directing production of Maine for Musical Theater West out in that Long Beach area. And they never began rehearsing. So they're just kind of quarantining there in Southern California. But I'll see them all online next Tuesday, because we're going to do a thing online just for the anniversary. But when I've done countless incarnations of this show with casts that are long running, like the first company I put in that theater in Pittsburgh, they wanted to open-end it to get people used to coming to that brand new theater in downtown Pittsburgh, in the theater district, next across the street from their Symphony Hall, Heinz Hall, cornered from Benedum, next to the Pittsburgh Public Theater, which is their big Lort theater. And that first production ran a year and a half, which was unheard of in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
And then they brought it back 5 years later for the 5th anniversary, and it ran another 7 months. Then I brought in Plaid Tidings, and that you couldn't get a ticket to that. So they did Plaid Tidings again, and you couldn't get a ticket to it. And this last October, when we opened that 15th anniversary of it there, it went through the roof again. Yeah. Because if you do it right, and let people, not only the actors feel ownership of these characters, but the audience feel ownership of those stories.
Yeah.
And identify with those four guys, because those four guys are everymen. You know, they're the Joes that live down the street. Then you watch an entire audience take ownership of the show.
Yes.
Rather than me trying to get you have to do what I did. No.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that because you know the show inside out and backwards, and you directed so many. And I've seen productions of this, and sometimes I don't enjoy it because I don't think I'm really seeing the person on stage.
That's
I
right.
be imitating or trying to be what they are not.
Yeah, you just get a degraded second and third generation, copy of something.
And you never want to do that with all of these.
With anything, with the chorus line, with anything that you ever do. Cowgirls, which I think is when didn't I first meet you and the group in San Diego? I guess when you guys were we were doing Forever Plaid in San Diego at the Old Globe.
That's right. The Old
Or
Globe.
Pasadena, and then you guys were doing Cowgirls, I believe, is when we first met. Yeah.
We met.
Yeah. Oh my Lord. See, I don't know who your audience is, or I could tell a lot of stories, really. So I have to be careful.
Me up here as I'm kind of directing you here, interviewing.
That's all right. I'd let you do that anytime. Are you kidding? I've watched your work.
Oh my gosh. So for Forever Plaid really changed your life, didn't it? I mean,
at that particular point, we were all working. I just knew that there was something there. There was something intangible. And there was a lot of obstacles. Stuart would say, well, I'm running out of money. It was interesting. Doing Mordred, this is when they had payphones in the dressing room, or outside the dressing room. The payphone was right next to me. And I was sitting next to Bob Fitch, talking about Annie. He was the original Rooster in Annie. He was playing Merlin in Pellinor. And Bob and I had the little crossover dressing room. There's only room for two of us. And the payphone. And the payphone would ring sometimes on Sunday morning after we'd done a Saturday night late show. Of course, my eyes were bloodshot and everything else. Thank God I only had 4 scenes. And the phone would ring and Stuart go, I just don't know if we can keep doing this, Guy. I'm broke and nobody's coming in. I'd say, Stuart, just hang in there. One more week. We've got good people coming, to try to attract a producer. And the phone would ring later, maybe at intermission, it'd be James going, listen, you got to keep him away from me. If he gets any closer to me, I'm going to kill him, meaning Stuart. Because, James and Stuart would fight like cats and dogs about this material. He said, I'm going to kill him. I said, James, don't worry. Don't kill him yet. Don't kill him yet. We've got something. And it did. It ended up, playing all over the world. We took it to LA and only for 10 weeks. And a year and a half later, we finally left the show to go do London on the West End for the 6 months that we were allowed to be there with British Equity, the British Actors Union.
Yes.
And so it did change a lot for me. It was interesting. And, when we were talking prior, gave me the chance to start directing. Because people would want me to put a company up. And I'd say, not knowing any better, I would say, okay, all right, great. So what else can I do for you in your season? What other show can you offer me? And they dealt with it as a negotiating term. I really wasn't trying to leverage them, or bully them into giving me something else. I just thought, well, maybe you've got something else that, because I need to start working with this, because the best way to learn this is to do this. And I already knew that in terms of what I wanted to see on stage always was good people telling good stories. That's the bottom line. Everything else is gravy. You can do it with one light bulb and one chair. And if you've got a good person telling you a good story, it's it's unmatched.
Yeah.
And it's why I think that the theater will come back in a huge way, because it could have gone away a long time ago. But it fascinates me. And the other reason I wanted to start directing is because what we all put together in this collaborative art form only exists the night it's done. Even if you do the show for 2 years, 8 shows a week, what you do on that Wednesday night no longer exists, except in the minds and the hearts of the person who saw it. If I painted this painting, it would be there forever. I might not be able to sell it. Nobody would buy it, but it still exists. But what you do there at the Play-by-Play Theater only exists the night that someone comes and sees it.
Right.
And that's a gas of an art form to me.
Yeah.
It wakes me up in the morning. Do you know what I mean? It's that ephemeral, but it's that of an adrenaline rush to work with good artists, whether you're just working with one other person or you're working with 60 other people up on that stage. The craft is the same. You have got to craft that story and craft that performance so that we sit there and participate with you out in that audience, being the hot medium that the theater is. You know?
Yeah, and that medium is extremely important. It's not going to bounce back as quickly as other.
No, because we have to get together. You know, we have to be together to experience that. It's one of the, I always say people, you know, that will see somebody in concert, a band, and they'll come back to you and go, "Oh my God, you got to hear this band. Here's you need to download this, or here's their CD." And you go, "Yeah, they're pretty good." And, no, man, you got to see them in person. You got to see them in person. They'll kill you, you know, or performer, because it is the immediacy of that shared response when you're sitting there watching.
Exactly. And I think when theater comes back, it will have that effect again on people.
Yeah, it will.
Because we can't touch right now. You know, we can't do that. And that's going to be just the idea of possibly touching will be as exhilarating as a kiss, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's going to be.
I can't wait.
You know, right now,
hold hands again.
Hold hands again. It is terrific. Well, because people do want to know, you know, how do you get into directing?
Right, because they don't have casting calls.
Like, well, they do, you know, so many universities now have co-opted, programs for this. And there have always been a certain set number of universities that were really doing the kind of work that needs to be done in terms of training individuals, whether it be on stage, whether it be technicians or designers or be directors. You know, there are major programs there for doing it. But yet again, it's the universities that actually throw you into the process of having to do it, because we can sit and discuss. I could sit with you, Carolyn, and talk about Uta Hagen's book on acting, or Viewpoints, or even, you know, I've got Stanislavski's writings up in my bookshelf, and they're great academic discussions. But we live in an art form that does not always have the same codified jargon. You know, if you and I were programming computers, if that's what we did, there'd be a language, a shared vocabulary that we use. But our vocabulary can change all the time. You know, there's many different ways of saying the same thing. It's the old Greek way of teaching that I deal with when I hold classes or when I am directing, is that I try to, what I say to you may land faster than saying the same thing to Mary, but Mary's up on that stage too. So I got to figure out the right way to reach her so that she can take that same ownership of A Doll's House or, you know, Forbidden Broadway. It doesn't make any difference to me. You know, there are parameters and needs that certain plays give you, whether it be a farce as opposed to a drawing room comedy. But the process of the actor trying to find the best way to tell that story in those realities with those relationships on stage is actually kind of consistent once you find a vocabulary or a way to reach each of those actors. Mm-hmm. So how do you get into directing? You know, for so long, particularly in this town, it's actually Jerome Robbins who made the difference, because people forget that Jerome Robbins, the famous choreographer, wanted to be a director. You know, in his mind, he was directing ballets, you know, which is choreographing ballets, but he wanted to have that entire project, that entire production, and somehow focused in what he was trying to do. So he went. This is probably in the late 50s, I think, probably maybe 56, 55, something like that. He took himself to the actor's studio and used a grant. He took himself to the director's lab at the actor's studio at that time period. And he hired, one of whom was my friend June Squibb. Mary, you and I have talked about June Squibb before, who was a dancer at that point. She was one of the first replacements in as one of the three strippers in, which I can't remember which one, in the original Gypsy. And then, you know, goes a lifetime, and then at age, you know, 76 gets nominated for Academy Award for Nebraska, which is a great, you know, story of perseverance. But he paid those dancers, June and others, more than they could get on unemployment at the time to work with him on scenes. They were going to work on their acting, and he could work on his directing. So he had to do it. He had to be with those actors to do it. And he did that for 4 years. He had that workshop with dancers to work on their acting, and so he could work on his directing for 4 years with grant money that he got and used to pay them. So you have to do it. I'm better now than when we started. Thank God. I mean, that's the point. You don't all of a sudden. I mean, some people get into a college environment. I didn't study this. I have a degree in American literature and a degree in German, and so I don't know what I'm doing. Yeah, I don't know what I'm doing. So I just always was gravitated to this business, and I worked with some really good mentors. Jack Lee, June's husband, Charlie Kakatakis, who had taught acting with Bobby Lewis, who had started with the group theater and was basically instrumental in starting the Actors Theater and left it when it started working too emotionally. Their work became too emotional based. But I divert too much from the question. I don't know how you get started. There are probably some great programs around the country in many different areas now. Not only just Juilliard or Yale graduate School of Drama. Northwestern has a good graduate program in directing. So the West Coast does too now as well. I just you've School of the Arts in North Carolina. But that's you taking it into the academic world, and you've got to be sure that particular environment provides you with the reality of what our profession is, which is fast, and they want you to work cheap. And like anything else now, particularly in terms of what television auditions have been in terms of acting and directing, you have to come in with your work done because they don't have time for it anymore.
Right. Yeah. It's too costly otherwise.
Yeah. Yeah. And you are dealing with things that change on a season by season basis. What's got the money behind it. That's what's going to be interesting to see how theater does come back in terms of what producers are able to do financially and with what the audiences are wanting to see. I think a lot of the things that have been put up recently, audiences initially will not really care about coming to see.
Yeah,
we've got to get back to bringing them something that moves them either to tears or to laughter, and not makes them feel at fault about something or upset and disappointed with society. And it's disappointing enough right now. So I think that's another reason the art form fascinates me, is that it is so market driven as to because you can build into anything you want to, and if they don't come, you're done.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So now you became a director. Was this always an ultimate goal of yours, or did it come from all those times with Plaid, the Plaid?
Well, not only Plaid, but like I was doing that huge production of Girl Crazy, the Gershwin's musical that became Crazy for You because of the production we did in Detroit for Harry Nederlander at Harry Nederlander's, who was Jimmy Nederlander's older brother. And he had a theater there in Detroit. His little brother had the Fisher, but and Joey Nederlander, and Joey had the theater there in Cleveland, one of them, or maybe he just had the Cleveland Indians. I don't know. The Nederlander boys were all over the place, but Harry put us up there, and I was doing it with Lorna Luft, Judy Garland's daughter, playing that Ethel Merman role. And I watched that piece because the script was tough. Randy Skinner really had to deal with that old 1930 script because it didn't really work. And so what we were trying to do is get a version of that script to work there with those audiences in Detroit. And they went nuts for it. In fact, they kept extending this. And that's what gave not only the Gershwin estate, but the Nederlanders the impetus to go back and get that rewritten and turn it into Crazy for You, but using pretty much that same score, because that score is one hit after another. Embrace Me, My Sweet Embraceable, that one. They're writing songs of love, but not for me. One hit after another in that. That Gershwin even conducted opening night. And in the pit was Glenn Miller on the trombone, and Bix Beiderbecke on the trumpet, and what's his name, the drummer, who was the famous big band drummer.
Well, there's
Krupa. Well, I think they were all in the pit opening night. I think you're right. Anyway, we'll look that up. But my point is that watching us try to dissect that script and find what would work and what wouldn't work, because it was such a collaborative room working with Randy, who was a wonderful tap choreographer at 42nd Street. He was Gal Champion's assistant on 42nd Street, and all of these revivals of 42nd Street, Randy has choreographed. Yeah. But he was directing and choreographing, and it was a very collaborative room, and I think that turned a switch on. You know, I'd been in class for so much, because we all used to just go to class, even if you were doing a Broadway show. Like you'd go to the gym, we'd go to an acting class, right? Which was very important that I had that kind of guidance and teaching, you know. And I did lots of workshops with Jack Lee, who was really involved in old operettas, trying to bring them back to life, trying to deal with things like Street Scene. The musical that was made out of the Little Foxes, Mark Blitzstein wrote. Jack had us doing those shows all the time, just for one night only, at the York or over at the old Chelsea Theater. Regina is the name of that operetta, that music sung through opera, basically, of the little Lillian Foxes, the Little Foxes, Lillian Hellman's The Little Foxes. Yeah. So when we were putting those pieces together, I think I started getting that kind of sense that I could have a voice in a larger picture, rather than just waiting for my big number to come along or my scene to happen. And right. I think it was just a natural sort of easy extension into that. And that's why my work over the last 20 plus years of directing has also been all over the map. You know, from Shakespeare to Neil Simon to right. Art to some of the worst farces, Mary, you and I have ever had the privilege to work on, and still try to make work. But you know what I always say, Carolyn, is that good actors can save bad material, but bad actors cannot save good material. That's why we see bad Shakespeare and bad Chekhov. But, good crafting can save ultimately a bad play. But bad crafting can 86 the best play ever written.
And I have witnessed you do that time and time.
Oh, we won't name names, will we? We do. But we'll have to do them again. Who knows? We got to eat.
But you know what? You brought up a point that no matter what you're doing or where you are, you have to continually invest in yourself.
You do.
Or go and observe what's going on. And
that's right.
Part of it. I mean, even during this time where there's nothing available, people can go online and see things. They can take classes. You continue to guide people.
Yeah, I had coachings this week. Yeah, and it's not that there's a lot of auditions to coach right now. There's a couple that keep hope springs eternal, that they think they're going to go into rehearsal by the end of August, 1st of September. Some of these shows they're going to open on the road. So I've had several coachings in the last couple of weeks about some of the same material, as a matter of fact, because it's a way for me to communicate with another artist, an actor, and try to get them better at what they're doing. It's the same thing, Mary, when you and I have been working on a play where we go, man, this has got a lot of problems. But we know nothing we do is going to lengthen or shorten the run. We know when it's going to open, and we know when it's going to close. Regionally, that's one of the interesting things. Regionally, it's not like you're trying to hit a home run where it's going to run 3 and 4 years. You're really trying to do the work given to you within that time frame, and with the money that has been given to you to work with, and get the best possible product. And that's not a bad way to spend, 3 or 4 weeks with somebody, because working with good people makes us better, so that we can take that to the next party and the next party and the next party. And to me, that's the attempt. They're all just great exercises. And the exercise is worth, getting into the room and working with those people. That's why it's difficult here. It wouldn't go over well in this apartment if I walked around this place, acting out loud or trying to direct. No, you sit on this side of the table tonight. No, that wouldn't work. So I've started reading, going back and looking at source material. I don't know why it hit me, but I had never read the play Porgy that became Porgy and Bess, DuBose Hayward's play. I'd never read that play. 1926, I believe it was, or 27. It's astonishing. It is brutal what he wrote and what they could get away with on stage at that time period. You know, before censorship hit it there in the early 30s to the mid 30s. It was amazing. They knew what they wanted, which became The Most Happy Fella, Frank Lesser's musical. They knew what they wanted was a play written by Sidney Howard.
Yeah.
It is amazing. You see why these composers later looked at this material and went, this is a Street Scene is another one. You know, Elmer Rice wrote this play that was new American naturalism there in the 20s. Street Scene. It literally just a few tenement houses. Yep. And what you look at his stage directions of how he peopled that play with people who just walked by while this horrible drama was going on. Ultimately, this heartbreaking, domestic abusive heartbreak was going on. Uh-huh. And I thought, well, I'm going to read these plays while I have a little time because, I've never read Porgy. And I mean, just the way he captured the language and the dialect of those people in that particular part of Charleston where he grew up. I mean, even Stephen Sondheim said some of the best lyrics. I think he has a piece of writing that's called the 50 Unsung Heroes or 50 Unsung Greatest, or, people that we may not know that he said we should miss. I'd have to look up the title. Yeah. But one of them was DuBose Hayward as a lyricist, because he co-wrote the lyrics with Ira Gershwin for Porgy and Bess. And Sondheim said some of the best lyrics I have ever heard are the ones that Hayward, who had never written song lyrics, so some of the lyrics that Hayward wrote for that score. So I thought, well, I'm going to go back and read Porgy, and it raises the hair on the back of your head. Wow. What Price Glory, that anti-war play in 1926, 25. You think they were writing this in 1920? It was great.
Yeah, it all is going to inform you when this period of history can move on and inform you into your future.
Yeah, because we don't necessarily have time to do all that when you really are trying to grind it out.
Exactly. So right now, what happens is you take time to rest and research.
Yeah.
And rethink how things are going to be.
And talk to you guys and what you're doing there, which is great. I think what you guys are trying to do there is great.
Figure out what the next phase is going to be. I mean, there was an article that a friend of ours shared with us today in which they talk about the next phase of theater being tiny casts, restricted audiences, simple sets, plenty of space, intensified by a scarcity of money. I mean, this is all play by play.
To begin with. So nothing's different for you, right?
This without knowing it.
We were ahead of the COVID curve.
That's right. That's right. You were doing it before anybody else had any idea of how to do it. Yeah.
But anyway, but flexibility is going to be precious commodity. The most precious ingredient is flexibility. Because many people are thinking that they can just come back and start again. We can start. I mean, you and I are associated with a number of other theaters. I mean, I'm not just play by play,
right?
But Fireside, Mountain Playhouse, your Pittsburgh PLO, all these places, all across the country.
Yeah, they're really having to define how they're going to be when they can finally open up again. Yeah. And maybe a vaccine will change all bets will be off when there's one of those. Yeah. But in the meantime, the kinds of planning that you guys are doing, the kinds of rethinking, imagining what we're going to do is what we kind of have to do with every new project anyway.
Yes.
I mean, just if you think about what you two did last summer, that was a reimagining of space and resources and people, because it had not been done before there.
Some people don't know we did Theater in the Park.
Yep. Midsummer Night's Dream, Green Bay's first Shakespeare in the Park. Yep.
Is that happening again this summer yet, or do you know? Or
well, we have to. It's because it's a fluid situation.
It's in discussion.
We have to test. Okay. But we're thinking out of the box. We're thinking of other options or ways to do it. It's very exciting to be creative.
Yeah.
Into an opportunity for something, right?
Well, yeah, absolutely. And what you said about your theater was doing this anyway. As actors, we have lived entire lives where you go, oh, I thought I had that part, but they turned around and gave it to somebody else. Mm. Or I was going to do this show, but they lost their money. or I thought for sure this was going to be, in the bag here, and now it's postponed. We've lived that way, our entire careers, basically. You can get that kind of disappointment 4 times in a day if you get the right subway connections. But regardless, we have that kind of flexibility and ability to kind of. It's like when you asked me how did you get into directing? Well, it just started kind of moving that way. Yeah. So you kind of say, okay, that opportunity is there. What should I do with that opportunity?
Yeah. So you have to just like seize the opportunity. Yeah. Seize the opportunity.
Yeah. And I think the opportunities will be rife. I think it's going to have to be a whole new set of understandings about how people are paid for this opportunity. I don't see some of those contracts existing the way they have existed in the past.
Yes. Yes.
But again, all of that's conjecture. All this all changed so fast, and it can all change very quickly again.
That's what I like about theater people is they have that positivity.
Yeah.
Everybody that we've interviewed so far, and you just the icing on the cake, be positive.
Yeah. Otherwise, we would have been out of this business a long time ago. It would have run us off in our 20s.
I mean, I don't know if I'd suggest anybody going into the career.
That's what I feel so bad about. There's one student I have right now who's awfully good, but I think, and she studies with me just to work because she's still in high school. She's awfully talented, and she's in one of those performing arts high schools, one of 3 of the boarding, although this particular performing arts boarding high school is only 20 minutes from her house there in Boston. But I at times start feeling, am I training her for this sort of dinosaur profession that she's going to be coming into? But frankly, this profession has existed since right after the dinosaurs, since people stood up in caves and sang and danced about the hunt. And so it's something primal in us to go sit in the dark and be told good stories. It's primal because there's so many other platforms to be entertained with. But what's interesting, and you and I kind of chatted about it, to find ways to, particularly of those of who work in the theater, to work in these formats now. Like so many people are having to audition with video submissions online. They're not in the room anymore. And I think we'll see that to become primary as the years go by, because it saves people having to fly, and it does not substitute by being in the room with somebody. But I think we'll see it more and more. So then the actor has got to figure out a way. How do I then capitalize on not just this camera looking at me doing my big number to the balcony, but actually work within this context? So when you and I were discussing that play that's on the Public Theater, and Carolyn, if you didn't get a chance to see it, you'd be fascinated. It's only an hour long. Richard Greenberg's play that he wrote for the same actors that he had do his whole trilogy for the Apple family. And this one's called "What Do We Need to Talk About?" And it's back up on their website, on the Public Theater, New York's Public Theater, and you'll watch those 4 actors. 5 actually, because 2 are in the same frame, because Marion Plunkett and J.O. Saunders are actually married in real life. And it's a play, and it was based on a trilogy he wrote for the Public Theater that these actors did, and I saw them. I think you can still see them on PBS. PBS filmed them for great performances. But they're stunning. They're very American Chekhov. Nothing really happens except they sit around and talk and eat. And they are having a Zoom meeting. They are literally having to Zoom because they're all quarantined. He wrote it so fast and so immediately in this, you feel like you're sitting in the Zoom meeting, or in this case, the StreamYard meeting, with these 4 actors as this family. There's 3 sisters and a brother. And as they relate, and they're still eating while they're, talking to each other, because it's about around the dinner hour, which is when all the plays on stage take place. And you're watching them and a playwright deal with the format in which he needed to be writing, which was the only thing available to him, which was a Zoom meeting with these actors. It's kind of great.
Yeah, that's rethinking.
Yeah, it's being imaginative with the form and the what necessity has forced on you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Now you are, I can say now, wise because
I'm old.
When they're in their 20s.
Yeah.
But a little older, you gain wisdom.
Yeah.
But now you, as a director, now you've worked with so many varied people, from newbies that come in and audition, or anybody who auditions, and well-established actors. What is it that you look for when people come into audition? I mean, can anybody really blow an audition?
I think so. They can end up sabotaging themselves by looking homogenized anymore, because this town is lousy with good voices. This
Yes.
town is lousy with good dancers. But if you, and it's interesting to sit behind the table to see this, because they then become rather interchangeable. In other words, I could use this girl or I could use this girl, because But if someone comes in and has something going on here, something going on here, in other words, are working subtextually, and by that I mean not with just the lyrics of the song or the words on the page, but really have taken the time to develop a relationship in that room, which is the worst way to get a job. I mean, first of all, look at the lighting. It's fluorescent. You're in this horrible room. There's a folding table in front of you with people sitting in metal chairs doing other things, eating, we're taking notes, whatever. I mean, it's you're not standing alone in the dark with the light on you, which focuses all the attention on you. So and you don't have anybody to work with, unless you have been put together with an audition partner, or there's a reader in the room. But what I teach in terms of this audition is that there are two basic questions. Again, this is me reducing all of the academia to the most, tangible, immediate thing. There's only, where are we? All right, we're in the kitchen. All right, what am I doing? Okay, I'm cooking. Who am I? All right, let's see. I'm a father, and I'm a brother to him, and who am I? What do I do? Then the most important is, who are you talking to, and what do you want? That's the 5. That's it. Because all the other questions are based on that. And in terms of an audition, you've got 3 minutes, whether it be in your 16 bars or your 32 measures of song to sing, or your quick monologue that you've got, whether it's dramatic or comic or whatever, classical. You need to be sure that you go in there and take the moment to know who you're talking to and what you want. Yeah. And if you live within that, I guarantee you, and you must never think the people behind the table are the smartest people in the room, because often they're not. That the people behind the table, I feel them. If somebody's got that going on, they go from this to this. They actually move forward if they're interested in somebody. They may not know why they are, but it's because that actor has presented an involved reality even within that 2 or 3 minutes. They're wanting somebody from somebody they're talking to, because we're reactive humans, creatures. That's it. Everything we do is based on want. Everything. It just is.
Yep.
You didn't choreograph, Carol, in your head shaking yes right then. You just wanted me to know you understood what I said, so I got that information from you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So everything is based on a want. And with that, go ahead, Mary. Sorry.
It's going to be the challenge of auditioning in this format, to be able to bring that to the screen, which is it is also a little different.
It is, technically.
But if you're honest about that and do those 5 things you said, I mean, it could.
Yeah, the 5 things grounds you. This may be a new piece. You may not have the whole play. So a lot of that you may just have to make up. Well, you can. No one's has to know what you've made up. If this is a new play and they haven't given you the entire script. Yeah. No one needs to know who you're talking to. Carolyn, if you were not having to live with Mary during this time period, but I said Mary to you, you would immediately get a visual picture of her. You know what her laugh sounds like. You know what color eyes she has. You know with what maybe she might be wearing, because you've seen so many of her clothes by now. Do you know what I mean? It would be that available. It would be that immediate. So even if this is not Mary in the play that you're either singing to or talking to, if you decide to go in there as an auditioner and go, I'm going to be talking to my mother, in that blank wall behind all those people's heads sitting at that table, if I said your mother, you'd have an image of her right then and there. It would be that immediate. And it just grounds you so that you're not held hostage by the bad lighting, by the people eating or talking behind the table and not paying attention to your work. Damn them. And and you would be grounded to who you're talking to and what you want from them, you know.
Yeah.
And that's basically the core homework if you're given something the night before, so that you can go in at 11:30 the next day and do the audition. Sometimes you don't get the material to the night before. So.
Yeah, exactly. Now, when you work with more established people,
Mm-hmm.
do they listen to you?
Oh yeah, no, the good ones do. And even when I was, doing things with Stritch, Elaine Stritch, she would start by going, "Are we going to do it this way?" And I would start by saying, "Well, we're going to give it our best shot, and if not, we'll find another way to do it." You kind of have to deal with them. But the people that are really crafted, Sandy Duncan, June Squibb. Believe it or not, one that I had worked with, it was so crafted. Oh, look. Yeah, that's from goodness, that's from Love Letters in North Carolina. Yeah. That's Rachel Evan Woods' father. Ira David Wood is his name. He's great. He runs a theater in Raleigh, North Carolina. This was not at his theater, but he's run one there for like 40 years, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Rachel Evan Wood grew up working in her dad's theater. That's where she learned how to be an actress. Yeah. From Westworld, I think she's still on, right? I think she's still on Westworld. Yeah. I lost my train of thought.
The people that you worked with,
Lynn Redgrave, when I worked with her, she came from acting royalty. Her father and her mother, Rachel Kimpson, was her mother, very, very famous English actress who married Michael Redgrave.
Yep.
And she and her mom, Rachel, were doing these Shakespearean sonnets, basically. And they'd done it a lot, but I was the one that was directing it for this particular, presentation of it, which was a couple of different people on the bill. And she just said, well, that was so interesting to take this time to reinvest in these. She was revisiting it for the, umpteenth time, but that's why she was good, is because she realized, all right, so I'm going to do the same thing I've been doing, but it can't be stale. I still have to invest in it. Same thing when I was working with Lou Diamond Phillips and as the King and the King and I, with Rachel Jones, who was just in Dear Evan Hansen, the mother in Dear Evan Hansen. And Rachel had not been working in a while, and I hired her to play Mrs. Anna, and she's not anybody's idea at that point of a Mrs. Anna. Yeah. But they destroyed the place. And Lou Diamond came to me and he said, I did this 10 years ago, but I think it's as if I have never done it by the way we're working on this. So the good ones listen, and the good ones want you to be their ears and eyes so that they don't have to monitor themselves. They don't have to check out if they're going to screw up or if it's going well, if it's not going well. They want to trust somebody out there that can tell them the truth and be their monitor for them, with all the years and expertise that they have.
Well, it's so obvious that you are a person who absolutely delights in the craft and in challenging everyone you work with, actors, crew, designers, and you also challenge the audience.
Yeah.
You don't spoon feed to them, but you challenge everyone in enjoying this or having an experience.
Yeah, they won't disappoint you. If you're doing all the work for the audience, whether it's emotional or whether it's in terms of what's funny, humor, Mary, we've worked on this forever. If you're telling them what's funny, then they don't have to laugh. You're laughing for them. Sure. If you're banging on them, telling them what's sad and heartbreaking, they don't have to emotionally commit because you've already done the emotional work for them.
Right. Like, this very serious moment, for example.
I was just telling somebody, yes, it's funny. First of all, it's a sight gag.
It's a sight gag.
Yeah.
But you were funny too. I was just telling somebody last week, I think it was Sandy. No, you know who it was? Deb Monk and I were talking about you. Remember Deborah Monk from the original Pump Boys and Dinettes and Oil City Symphony? And yeah, she was in, Bobby did her hair this whole season on New Amsterdam.
Right.
And she was supposed to start rehearsing a month ago for HBO's new Julian Fellows series called The Gilded Age. He's moved it to, late 1800s New York City, much like this is the American version of Downton Abbey. Yeah, The Gilded Age. Anyway, we were talking about you, and I said one of the funniest things I have ever seen was Mary Ellinger with a black Russian cigarette lit that she never smoked. It was just lit, doing this existential, not tirade, but this stream of consciousness, sort of like long extended monologue about the ennui of the world and how boring it all is, and how we live and then we die. And I'm telling you, I would sit out there in rehearsals and wet my pants because of the time you took and the idea that every time you started to drag on that cigarette, you thought of something else to say and it came away. So it built up our desperate anticipation. Is she ever going to drag on that cigarette or what? But then you just used it to do smoke circles like this at one point to Larry Tobias, I think was the actor you were talking to.
Trying to recall my lines, actually, guys.
They did none of them. They were all non sequitur. None of them really made sense. I don't know how you memorized it, but that's why I hire you, because you do.
And I so appreciate that.
You're welcome.
No, you've been good for my soul, my creative soul.
Likewise.
I never expected, I never planned for all of those things that I did. You just, like you said, you take all those opportunities, it brings you to meeting wonderful people like you.
And that's why we like to go back to the well again. Carolyn, that's why, particularly directors will go back to the people they've worked with because they have a shorthand. We're always working with basically strangers because there are no theater companies much in this country anymore. There are in England. The National Theatre has a group of people. The RSC does. The Gate does in Ireland. The Dublin does. But we don't do that. We're always working with people in a short time period, and then we go work with another group of people. So if you've got a shorthand and you know that they enjoy working with you, then a lot of that prep work, a lot of that investigation work has already taken place. So, if I get a chance and the right thing for her to work on, even if it's not really the right thing, because she's versatile, I don't pigeonhole people, and that way I'm going to look better. It's not just altruistic on my part, Mary, because you make me better,
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And I know everybody who's been listening appreciates your insights and your honesty and your candor and your good humor.
Thanks.
And I always like that whenever we get together, you always buy me a drink. I think that's fabulous. Right now, the person who's always buying me a drink is my daughter.
That's right. That's right. But thank God you've got her.
I get the food. She gets the booze.
Yeah, she makes the drinks and you cook. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah. We're a good.
I probably have talked on too long, haven't I? But
anyway, not at all. I like you said, never at a loss for words, are you?
No, we aren't, are we, when we get together?
Well, thank you so much, Guy. Love you. Stay safe. Love to Bobby.
We will. Same to the two of you, and good luck with things there. Keep me posted as to what's happening as these days go by, and I'll do the same, okay?
Sweetheart.
All right. More later. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for tuning in today. Thank you to Guy and his insights. That was wonderful. Yeah. And a little fun stories about Forever Plaid, which I know so many of you have done and love. So we are done for the week. And I mean, just for like one day, because we're back on Sunday with opera singer Yvonne Fraser. She is American, but she lives in Germany, so that's very cool. So until then, be safe, be well. If you're able to make a donation to your favorite local performing arts group, please do. These are hard times. And like we were saying, this industry is not going to bounce back in the way that other industries are. It's going to take a long time. It's going to take creative patience. So please, if there's any way you can help your favorite group.
Any group.
That's amazing. So until then, stay safe, stay well, stay creative, stay busy, and we'll see you Sunday.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thanks. Thank you.